Now, change is inevitable in our organizations, particularly if we want to keep the vision fresh and the ministry relevant. As we have discussed, only a healthy body can reproduce and grow. Along this journey, leadership transitions are inevitable, and so in this episode we will discuss some transitional principles that will maintain church health. The condition or relative health of a ministry will determine the type of leadership needed to move a church forward. For the purposes of our discussion here, I will use three general categories: chaotic, comfortable, or healthy, to describe the condition of a church. Each of these states are on a continuum and each require a specific type of leadership. A chaotic situation is characterized by a state of upheaval, usually at the leadership level. It could be a case of where a leader, without warning or short notice, announces their plans to leave the church. This may cause confusion and result in people being hurt and disappointed. There may be a moral or personal crisis that temporarily or permanently requires the removal of the leader. Now, some churches experience long-term chaos that may be caused by conflicting groups or a history of frequent pastoral changes. These kinds of situations only serve to stunt the growth of a ministry and inhibit a church from pursuing its kingdom potential. A church in this condition requires leadership to intervene and drastically change the direction of the church. Now, a comfortable church has more likely been one that has had much success in the past, but has entered a phase in its existence where it has lost its sense of vision and people are resistant to change. People are not necessarily unhappy, but they're kind of complacent, and it may have crept into the life of the church throughout the church. Progress may be inhibited by a low level of conflict that no one is anxious to confront because it may escalate into something bigger. See, in a comfortable church, innovators are either not welcome or they are treated with suspicion and are not trusted. A church in this condition requires transitional leadership. In some cases, with some instruction and encouragement, the current leadership may be the ones to lead a transition. However, in other cases, leadership who specialize in transition may serve the church temporarily, eventually establishing new leadership for the church. There may even be cases where a transitional leader may become part of the next leadership. Now, a healthy church is characterized by a strong sense of vision, purpose, and fruitfulness. There is excitement about the reputation and the role of the church in the larger community. People are growing and are open to change, and they view church gatherings with positive anticipation. Leaders lead with respect and are able to communicate clearly. A healthy church could face a pastoral change because the lead pastor may retire or is called by God to another ministry. But a church in this condition requires a leadership succession. Natural succession of leadership reduces the amount of stress or anxiety that a change at this level may sometimes cause. That doesn't mean that there won't be some sense of loss, but if a church perceives that the leadership is in good hands and that the change has been well managed, it will be easier for them to adjust. The success of a succession of leadership depends a lot on the preparation of the congregation of the new leader. Responsibility for the necessary preparation rests most heavily on the outgoing leader, along with the wise advisors, whether they be spiritual eldership of the church or in some cases an experienced outside consultant. A few questions can help identify where our church or organization is on this continuum. For example, how would you describe the condition of your church? And what evidence would you use to cite to justify your description? Now, does your church fit somewhere between two of these categories? What kind of leadership is required to help your church move forward? And what role do you have in helping your church pursue their potential? The reality of church life is that leaders don't stay forever, yet leadership change has all the potential to be among the most challenging and emotional periods in the life of a congregation. Typically, those who are in a position to choose a leader for a church have focused their attention on the qualifications, experience, and the skills of potential candidates. Usually there has not been an attempt to assess a church in order to match it with the suitable leader. In other cases, there has not been an intentional evaluation and appointments are made on the basis of a feeling or an intuitive sense. And often decisions are made on the basis of someone being available and willing. But a more intentional approach would be to take into account the circumstances of a local body, the necessary competencies of a potential leader, and at the same time that we're listening to the guidance of the Holy Spirit. See, guiding a church through transition requires understanding the condition of the church as we were just discussing, as well as understanding where they are at the life cycle and how healthy their ministries are according to the ministry flow chart. Here I'm just briefly explaining some key issues of transitional leadership ministry, explaining what it is, the objectives it is designed to achieve, as well as exploring what gifts, skills, and personality traits are needed to be an effective transitional leader. But the resources provided will help you focus on evaluating and matching potential leaders to particular church situations. The questions focus on goal setting and evaluation, address character, experience, the style, and the philosophy of ministry, and the gifts and the skills. While there's never a perfect fit, engaging in this process will help leaders make better choices and result in healthier churches.
This series is based upon our MCNet coaching and ministry guides. There are basically 2 parts to the series, 12 episodes that cover the 5 sections of the coaching guide and 18 episodes that cover the 8 workshops of the ministry guide. As a team, we have had the opportunity to serve in various parts of the world over the last decades using these materials to equip leaders and coach ministry teams throughout our ministry coaching network. This leadership team coaching in episodes 1 to 12 are intended for the core leadership team and cover big picture issues that affect the whole ministry. Here, issues regarding sharing vision, developing healthy culture, bringing about change, and multiplication strategies are discussed. There's a playbook at the end of each of these first 12 coaching episodes, which serves as a guide to help implement these church health and growth tools. These first 12 episodes then coincide with the ministry team workshops in episodes 13 to 30, which are designed to equip every member as they serve in the body. You can also check out our Christian Leadership Institute training program. This is a unique approach to ministerial training based on a competency-focused mentorship. The free materials for this series, as well as the coaching and ministry guides, are available from the links in the description box below. Just as many others have, we are sure you will find our other Leadership Matters podcast series helpful for you and your ministry.
The typical approach to a change of leadership or a pastor is to provide basic pastoral care, preaching and conducting services, and some short-term administration until a new leader or leaders are found through the search process. An intentional transitional model views the time between leadership as a season of renewal and opportunity. It is during this time that substantial positive change can take place, helping to bring the church to a place of health. This benefits the church by creating the climate for renewal as it focuses on church health, which the flow chart and life cycle we have already discussed can be used. Here are a few goals of this type of ministry. Again, if you want more detail, we have several other readings and materials available in the links below. Providing closure is the first goal. Closure involves dealing with the past in such a way that the past is not allowed to hinder or restrict what God is wanting to do in the future. A transitional leader comes into the life of the congregation as a counselor to help individuals relate to and deal with their past so it does not negatively impact the plan of God for the future. The issues that will need to be faced are celebrating the past, forgiveness, holding on to the good, and letting go of some hurts. Providing relevant preaching and communication is another goal in this process. Those impacted by leadership transitions need to hear from God. It is not merely sermons that are required, but rather they need to hear the word of the Lord. And thirdly, providing effective short-term administration is also essential. The essence of pastoral ministry is a coaching function. It's about equipping others to serve in the body. And this is at the heart of a successful transitional ministry. And providing pastoral care then, of course, is another primary goal. The church family not only requires warm, relevant preaching and teaching, but also extra nurture and care during a time when their main leader or leaders are gone. Now, facilitating relationships renewal should also be a goal in this process. If meaningful and enduring changes to occur in the local congregation during the leadership transition period, it often needs to start in the area of relationship renewal. This refers to renewing, restoring, and reviving connections on both the vertical and horizontal levels. Now, facilitating vision renewal is another goal. Healthy churches have a vision. As we have previously discussed, arriving at a shared vision is a process that takes time. As the entire body listens, they can together discern God's vision for their ministry. Now, the greatest thing a pastor or leader can do for people in transition is lead them in discovery of the destiny God has for each of them. And finally, facilitating structural renewal may seem less important, but as we've seen in our discussions regarding wineskins, without this, new wine will be lost. Transitional leaders lead the church through a process of structural renewal. This process enables leaders and all believers to examine their theology and tradition of church structure with the goal of putting in place organizational structures and processes that will help facilitate the fulfillment of their mission. And then facilitating the search process is also a goal, although the details are dependent upon their particular ecclesiastical structure of the denomination or church. As a ministry, we believe in a team approach to church leadership and structure, but depending upon how your church is structured, this may vary. My series on the fivefold ministries may be helpful to listen to at this point. Identifying and implementing new leadership is a spiritual process, whatever the church structure may look like. The search process should be one that opens everyone's senses to where God is already leading the church and where He is working in the heart and life of those who will become the next leaders of the church. So as we wrap up this episode, let's look at the playbook for this section. To begin with, here are a few questions to consider. How would you describe your church or ministry from a chaotic, comfortable, or healthy perspective? And discuss your conclusions with your team and see if they agree. How do their views differ from your own? Number 3, what kind of leadership is needed to move your church forward? And who can help do this? Next, identify the church or churches which are in need of transitional ministry. Talk with your team to determine who they feel may be able to help provide leadership in this process. Then finally, discuss with your team the 8 goals of a transitional ministry. For each of the sections of this coaching series, we provide ministry team workshops which are designed to help anyone serving in the body apply these principles. For this section, the workshop is Biblical Foundations, or the Written Word, in episode 24. Jesus and His Word must be the foundation upon which the church is built and grow. Without this, it will be impossible to reproduce healthy leaders who are able to build healthy teams and reproduce ministries. This episode is only introduction, and so to see the full workshop, check out my Written Word podcast series. Now, the various resources available in this section include a leadership transition assessment and organizational change assessment, as well as some materials on leadership transition and succession. Our pathways of implementation this time use the transitional assessments as evaluation tools to identify and equip potential transitional ministers. This is a series of questions that will help leadership consider their need for transition and the steps that may be required. I've also provided a guideline page which we have used to integrate the coaching sections and workshops. The elliptical diagram explains the flow of the coaching sessions and the workshops of how they fit together. The blue one illustrates how the material can be used with existing churches, and the brown one for establishing new ministries. And you can get all the links to all these resources in the description box below. Well, okay, that's a rather brief look at this topic of leadership transition, but we have provided several resources and materials that will assist you in going deeper on this topic. Our goal as leaders is to develop the next generation and intentionally transition the ministry so that the church will be strong and healthy, able to reproduce ministry. In our next episode, we're going to specifically focus on the topic of church planting and starting new ministries, which is the fruitful result of a healthy ministry.